thank you for really talking to me about this subject. It's a subject that is very dear to my heart. So, and the things that we're going to be discussing, like change management, leadership, self-awareness, emotional intelligence, building trust, which is absolutely super important. This is fantastic to have you here, and this is part of the partnerships that I'm talking about. This is part of the consortium that I'm talking about, is really connecting with like-minded professionals to talk about education like you. And during the past few months, through this organization, LearningBox International, I have really been helping individuals, organizations, and communities implement a successful remote work environment through the development and delivery of sustainable learning programs. And the trends we see are really, really quite positive in one end and a bit worrisome in another end. We see remote work increasing productivity for organizations, for example. We see organizations that have a positive outlook at the remote work and are making a conscious step to transitioning into it. Could actually have 10% increase in employee retention. That's amazing to me. Even more interesting, I think, is remote workers could save $7,000 per year, and organizations 11,000 per employee per year. The last bit of stats that I want to give you in this remote work environment and how we're transitioning to it is that 88% of employers worldwide have transitioned to remote work, and they will continue to do that basically on a permanent basis. So we see a lot of advantages. We see productivity, we see employee retention, we see reduction in stress, we see an improvement in hiring, cost reduction, and flexibility. But we also see a lot of challenges in terms of well-being, in terms of routine, in terms of isolation, in terms of motivation. And so it's interesting to see that 49% of individuals feel that the biggest fight is related to well-being. 22% cannot be turned off after work. So basically, it's a matter of routine. They cannot just set up the routine properly. 19% feel lonely or isolated, and 8% cannot get motivated. So this is all interrelated and connected. So I'm really happy to have you here with me, and I'm really sorry for all this big introduction, but I'm really looking forward to discuss these things with you from a change management perspective, from an emotional intelligence perspective, and your expertise as a consultant in these fields. So tell me a little bit about the trigger or the big thing about change management and how change management can help organizations transition to a successful remote work.
Yeah, thanks, Rahmat. I actually appreciate that context. It's really important to provide concrete data and information that can really help inform, like you say, what's working and also areas to be mindful of. And from a change management perspective, I focus in my consulting practice on the human side of change, and never has there been an importance to managing the human side of what's happened to all of us. And we've all been impacted on some level globally. And even though the future of work can be exciting, there are also some challenges from a change management perspective. So I put a lot of responsibility actually on leaders to role model and to lead what they expect the change to be. So even though people are going to be working and working hard, the landscape with which they do that in is changing, and it's going to require, for some people, a substantial adjustment. So when we think about change management, it's so important to look at it from a systemic standpoint, helping people appreciate how things will be different, what we want them to do differently, but also really embracing and being okay with when people do express struggle, what do they feel they're losing? You know, is it that camaraderie they used to have in the workplace? Now they have to adjust and flex their time because maybe they have children at home that are studying virtually, or
Right.
kids coming back and forth. So a lot of employees' worlds have been rocked, for lack of a better word. And unless from a change management perspective, we don't manage that up front and have those open and honest discussions, understand what each person is going through, and what transition support they're going to need, we could potentially be blindsided as leaders.
Right.
So I think the more thoughtful and planful they can be, the better.
Yeah, I do believe that change management is probably one of the biggest catalysts towards transitioning to a successful remote work for any organization, because it's a big change, right? It's a big change. The other element that I believe it is important is trust.
Mm-hmm.
Trust is huge, right? In terms of transition into remote work, you know, especially for leaders, and it's a two-way street as
Yes.
well, right? And so,
Yes.
tell me a little bit about your thoughts about trust in these environments, and how can we actually deal with that?
Absolutely. Trust is so foundational, especially if people are remote. You're not seeing your leaders and your coworkers every day on a day-to-day basis at the water cooler, at their desks. And so foundationally, the leader has to feel that the employees are performing, that they are really intentionally doing good work, and then the employees have to trust that their leaders have their back, and that the leaders will be there to support them if they are struggling, if they're not clear about their expectations. So I think a big component of trust is having that shared mutual dialogue around, are the leaders' needs and expectations being met, and are they being articulated clearly and succinctly and communicated to employees in a way where they can react, they can be collaborative in that approach to how can work get done, so that people aren't sneaking behind their leaders' backs because they have to leave at 3 o'clock to go pick up their children, which is a new reality for many people. And so can they have that open, honest transparency about mutual needs and expectations? It shouldn't just be one way where the leader's only accommodating the needs of the employees, but the employees also have to be flexible and accommodating to what it is that the leader is expecting of them. Because at the end of the day, they're still running a business. They still have to be productive. They still have customers to serve. They still have profits to make in order to remain viable. So I think that open, honest transparency and communicating mutual needs and expectations is foundational.
Yeah, I think you brought two elements which I believe they're important to me. One is leadership. You know, the idea of being a good leader and being self-aware as well. I think self-awareness is actually important, not only from a leadership perspective, but also from an employee perspective, in order to actually transition properly into remote work. Tell me a little bit more about self-awareness, leadership. What's your thoughts there?
Oh, that's a topic near and dear to my heart, and I love to speak about that in the context of emotional intelligence. So again, you know,
Right.
leaders create culture. Leaders are role models for how they want people to behave, and so people are going to mirror what their leaders do. And so, you know, if you have healthy work cultures, often you've got strong, emotionally intelligent leaders at the top, because a lot of those important qualities are being cascaded through the organization and being role modeled. So self-awareness is really about being able to understand the impact that you have on people. And with leaders, just by virtue of their title, their position, they're highly influential. And so just recognizing, you know, how they're coming across, what they're thinking and feeling, how they're articulating their thoughts and their feelings. Are they, you know, emotionally even keeled, or is there a lot of volatility that people are experiencing? Because people will be fearful of, you know, high emotionally charged workplaces where they don't know what to expect and they'll be walking on eggshells. So self-awareness is very much that being able to tune in, understand what's going on for you, and how to articulate, again, those thoughts and feelings in a manner that, you're not leaving people feeling damaged. You're able to speak and articulate in a calm, reasonable, respectful manner, even when emotions are high.
Yeah, absolutely. Completely agree with that. Based on my experience working with organizations implementing remote work, I found the elements of technology first,
Yes.
very important. How you're able to implement technology and how you use technology, what you use technology for what, because we have
Mm-hmm.
different technology for different things.
Mm-hmm.
And along with technology, the a policy, the implementation of policy in order to communicate to the employee and to the leader as well,
Mm-hmm.
how everything is going to happen, how things are going to work, what is expected of
Mm-hmm.
everyone during the remote work
Mm-hmm.
transition
Mm-hmm.
is also very, very important. And another element which I also want you to comment on is the topic of empowerment, which empowerment I think is very related to trust,
Mm-hmm.
right? But empowerment really is a big element in terms of motivation, in
Yes.
terms of not feeling isolated, in terms of communication, in terms of so many different elements go there. So tell me your thoughts about that.
Yeah. So I'll work backwards from that, because you did mention a couple of other important elements around technology as well. But the whole piece around empowerment is, again, understanding where your employees are at in terms of their development, how much hands-on support that they're going to need. So if you have a brand new employee that's come in around this time of COVID, now working from home, leaders working from home, they're probably going to need a more high touch kind of support. So you may need to check in with them regularly, make sure that they're clear about their expectations, and they're going to appreciate that, because they may not see that as over supervising. They're going to be grateful for the guidance and the regular check-ins. So again, very important to establish that up front, that this isn't me checking up on you, but it's me checking in on you, so that I'm sure that you're feeling you're getting what you need from me. People who have been around the organization a long time know what their expectations are, know what they need to do. Do not need their manager to check in on them hour on the hour, because that may be perceived as over supervising and micromanaging. And that can be very disempowering, very disheartening and disengaging, because the employees will immediately think, well, what, you don't trust me, you're just checking in on me, which dovetails nicely into the technology piece, because I know that in some organizations, they have technology embedded now in computers where they can see if people have stepped away for a certain amount of time from their computer, if they're logged on, if they're logged off, etc. So again, those could be very important analytics to have, but if it's contextualized well around the need for that in the policy, so that people know there's transparency and this isn't just Big Brother checking in on you. So that's a huge factor. It's the whole checking in. Why are we checking in? And the importance of conveying that trust.
Absolutely. So many organizations I've seen where they have failed in the transition towards remote work. And the reason for that is because they didn't think about these elements. They didn't think about change management. They didn't think about self-awareness. They didn't think about policies. They didn't think about trust. They didn't think about empowerment. All these elements are so important. And there's a right way and the wrong way to do a transition towards remote work. It's not easy,
No.
especially for an organization that has a lot of people
Yeah.
um, to be transitioned.
I agree. I would add around the policy piece that it's important to have policies because people need openness, transparency, they need guidelines. But I would really emphasize that they're guidelines, because transition for some people is so
Yes.
brand new. It's a new landscape. They don't really know what to anticipate or expect. But again, the flexibility of organizations and the retention and the building of trust is to treat each individual as a unique individual, and that some people may require certain accommodations, whether it's having, the ergonomics established well with the right resources, whether again it's flex time, whether it's being able to start later and finish later. I get that in some organizations there isn't always that flexibility, but to treat each individual as a unique human being with specific needs, and I think you're going to get that tenfold from the organization. But I think it's, some of the fundamental principles is to go in with an open mind, go in with curiosity, be collaborative with your employees around what is going to work and what are some of the stumbling blocks that everyone can anticipate, and then to work through them as they come up. So that is the transitional phase that they're going to have to figure out.
Yeah, and one more element that I want to bring very quickly is learning. Learning and development is so important for the organization. Continue to build capacity, especially in these times where is really a new norm, right? A new normal for organizations, and so people are learning new ways, and so learning is so vital for that. Nahla, this is great. I mean, we can talk about this for a long time, all day. And I think organizations need people like you, need consultants like you that have the change management, the emotional intelligence expertise to transition into these environments. How do people reach out to you, Nahla?
Well, I'd be thrilled if you included my contact information at the end of your tape. My company is called Kor Capabilities Consulting. I've been in business over 16 years. I do appreciate that a lot of organizations are getting back to basics, and maybe learning and development isn't top of mind for them. Yeah. But again, I do encourage that as things do settle down and people are finding their new groove, that they continue to invest in their employee development. It doesn't just have to be in-class training or virtual Zoom calls, but also creating opportunities within the job for succession, for growth. And that's what's going to retain some of the top talent. So I'd be thrilled to work with leaders or their teams to support them during the transition, but also post-transition. What are some of the ways that you can continue to engage and keep your employees motivated?
Yeah, trends tell us that organizations that plan ahead this transition are able to increase productivity by almost 200%. On the other end of the coin, organizations that really don't plan, they're not seeing a lot of productivity. In fact, they're seeing a lot of challenges, a lot of issues in transitioning and having a remote work environment. So it is important to think through the steps and be able to plan ahead.
Yeah.
Right. So absolutely.
Yeah, I mean,
go ahead.
I get there's an element of, we're figuring this out as we go along. I mean, no one's really, we haven't had a pandemic in 100 years, I think. So, I get that. I get that we're still trying, but as much as possible, if there is that inclusivity and working together, not feeling like you have to have all the answers as a leader or as an organization, and consult with people, do quick surveys, check in and see what's going to work. It doesn't mean you're going to be able to accommodate every single piece of feedback people share, but definitely the more planning and the more thoughtfulness that goes into that, the better success I think they'll achieve.
Yeah, right. We spoke about very critical elements. We talk about productivity, we talk about trust, we talk about technology, policies, change, self-awareness, leadership, all very related to what's going on these days during the pandemic, and especially with everyone working remotely. So thank you so much, Nahla, for joining, having a chat with me. And I'm hoping that one day we can actually cross paths and work together.
Yes, I appreciate that. In the meantime, let's keep on Zooming.
Let's keep on Zooming. Thank you.
Thanks, Rahmat.